What if I told you your brain processes more information in a single day than all the computers on Earth combined? This unassuming 3-pound organ is silently performing calculations that would make supercomputers jealous, but how does it do? Inside your skull right now, billions of neurons are firing in patterns so complex they make the internet look like a child's toy. The fascinating truth about your brain's processing power will change how you think about thinking itself. Imagine a universe more complex than any galaxy, pulsing with electrical signals, all contained within a 3-pound organ. That's your brain, a living network of billions of neurons communicating in patterns so intricate they dwarf the complexity of any known cosmic structure. This biological supercomputer processes information at speeds that make modern computers seem sluggish by comparison, yet for centuries, humanity vastly underestimated its capabilities. Ancient Egyptians discarded brains during mummification, believing the heart housed thought and emotion. Even Aristotle thought the brain's primary function was to cool the blood. The shift from these misconceptions to modern neuroscience reveals how our understanding has evolved. The Human Brain Project, a €600 million European initiative involving 500 scientists, attempted to map and simulate the entire human brain. Despite creating detailed 3D models of around 200 brain structures, researchers only scratched the surface of its full complexity. Similarly, the U.S. Brain Project had to significantly scale back its ambitions when faced with the sheer scale of neural connections. These efforts highlight a fundamental truth: the brain isn't just complicated, it's arguably the most complex system in the known universe. To grasp its scale, consider that a single cubic millimeter of brain tissue contains roughly 50,000 neurons forming nearly 500 million connections. If you laid out all the neural pathways in one person's brain end to end, they'd stretch over 100,000 miles, enough to circle Earth 4 times. This dense web operates continuously, rewiring itself through neuroplasticity, adapting to new experiences, and storing memories with astonishing efficiency. Unlike computer circuits, which follow rigid programming, neural networks dynamically rearrange their connections based on use, learning, and even injury recovery. But the brain's complexity doesn't stop at structure. Its functionality poses what philosopher David Chalmers calls the hard problem of consciousness: how electrical impulses give rise to subjective experience. We can map neural pathways and understand synaptic signals, yet explaining why certain patterns feel like joy, pain, or nostalgia remains elusive. This gap underscores how the brain doesn't just process information, it constructs reality itself, blending sensory input with memory and emotion to create your perception of the world. Unlike static systems, the brain constantly balances stability with flexibility. Regions specialize, like an orchestra's sections performing distinct roles, yet seamlessly integrate for coordinated function. Damage to one area can reroute tasks through surviving networks, a resilience unmatched by any machine. As research continues revealing its depths, one thing becomes clear: this 3-pound organ encodes not just data, but the essence of being human. And these neural superhighways don't operate in isolation. Their collective activity shapes decision-making, movement, even identity. Understanding how requires examining the architects of thought themselves, the neurons and their networks, which transform electrical pulses into everything from reflexes to creativity. What if your brain's neurons could form a superhighway system of information? Each neuron acts like a specialized cell capable of transmitting electrical impulses at speeds up to 120 meters per second. When one neuron fires, it releases chemicals called neurotransmitters that cross microscopic gaps to trigger the next neuron in sequence. This basic communication happens constantly. Your brain processes enough electrical signals every second to power a small light bulb, but individual neurons don't operate alone. They form networks resembling complex transportation systems. Picture a city where roads represent neural pathways. Some routes become major highways through frequent use, like well-practiced skills. Others remain small side streets, representing rarely accessed memories. Traffic flows adapt dynamically. New roads form during learning, while unused ones eventually close. This continuous remodeling occurs through neuroplasticity, allowing your brain to optimize its structure based on experience. Research reveals astonishing specifics about these networks. The average neuron connects to 7,000 others, creating staggering complexity. For perspective, mapping all connections in just 1 cubic millimeter of brain tissue would equal the data storage of the entire internet. Yet this density enables remarkable efficiency. Unlike computers that process linearly, neural networks operate in parallel, recognizing a familiar face in milliseconds while simultaneously recalling associated names and emotions. The adaptability of these networks becomes particularly evident after brain injuries. When stroke damages motor control areas, surviving neurons gradually reassign functions to undamaged regions. Patients relearn movements as pathways reconfigure, like deterring traffic around blocked roads until new routes become automatic. Studies tracking rehabilitation show that repetitive practice physically thickens neural tissue in compensating areas, proving structural change accompanies functional recovery. These networks don't just rebuild, they also prune. During childhood development, the brain eliminates nearly half its initial neural connections, strengthening only the most utilized pathways. This selective trimming continues throughout life. When you stop practicing piano, those one sharp neural connections weaken as resources redirect toward current priorities. Such plasticity demonstrates why mental exercises can sharpen aging brains just as physical training maintains muscle tone. The network's constant evolution raises profound questions. If all thoughts and memories emerge from these shifting connections, where exactly does consciousness reside? No single neuron holds a memory. Each recollection reactivates unique patterns across thousands of cells. Your sense of self may simply be the sum of these dynamic interactions, constantly rewritten like chapters in an endless story. Understanding this, consider how every experience subtly alters your brain's architecture. Learning a language grows new pathways. Trauma can etch enduring patterns. Even watching this video sparks synaptic changes as new information integrates. These adaptations accumulate silently beneath your awareness, gradually shaping how you perceive and interact with the world, which brings us to the brain's most fascinating performance: orchestrating conscious experience from this neural symphony. How scattered electrical signals coalesce into unified perception remains neuroscience's greatest mystery. But the answer likely lies in how these exquisitely timed networks synchronize their activity, merging countless inputs into what you experience as a single, seamless reality. Where do thoughts live in your brain? If you imagine your mind as an orchestra, each section plays a distinct role in creating the symphony of consciousness. The prefrontal cortex acts as conductor, handling decision-making and impulse control. The occipital lobe processes visual information like a section of musicians interpreting sheet music. The temporal lobe manages hearing and memory storage, your brain's archivists. Yet no single section holds the melody of thought alone. Consciousness emerges from their coordinated performance. The limbic system adds emotional depth to this neural concert. When you feel joy or fear, the amygdala triggers physiological responses, while the hippocampus links these feelings to memories. Neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin adjust the volume. Too little serotonin might mute happiness, while excess dopamine could amplify impulsive behaviors. Studies show electrically stimulating the amygdala can induce panic attacks in otherwise calm patients, proving how tightly chemistry and circuitry bind emotion to biology. This raises a paradox. If emotions stem from measurable reactions, why does love or grief feel uniquely subjective? Australian philosopher David Chalmers highlights this as the hard problem of consciousness. Science can map which areas activate when you recognize a face, but not how those signals become the experience of recognition. Consider vision. Your occipital lobe processes light data into shapes, the parietal lobe locates objects in space, and the temporal lobe identifies them yet. No, where in this chain exists a pixelated image. Your brain constructs reality from scattered inputs, like an orchestra blending notes into music without a central sheet. Brain injuries reveal how fragile this harmony is. Damage to Broca's area disrupts speech production, though comprehension remains intact, like losing wind instruments but keeping strings. Strokes in the parietal lobe may cause neglect syndrome, where patients ignore one side of their visual field, unaware they're missing anything. These cases suggest consciousness doesn't reside in one region but arises from integration. When sections fall silent, the symphony fractures. What keeps this system unified? Researchers propose synchronization as a key mechanism, neurons firing in rhythm across distant regions may bind sensations into coherent experiences. In epilepsy, overly synchronized activity causes seizures, proof that balance matters. Functional MRI scans show distinct brain networks activating when switching between focused tasks and daydreaming, like an orchestra alternating between Mozart and jazz improvisation. The brain's plasticity allows this system to adapt. Musicians develop thicker auditory cortex regions, while London taxi drivers show enlarged hippocampi from memorizing streets. Such changes demonstrate that practice physically rewires the orchestra's sections, yet the hardest question persists. Why? Does any of this feel like something? Whether consciousness is an emergent property of neural complexity or something more fundamental remains neuroscience's greatest mystery, and when this delicate system falters, the consequences reveal how intricately our minds are wired. Disorders like Alzheimer's dismantle neural networks gradually, erasing memories like pages torn from a score. Understanding these breakdowns may hold clues not just to repairing damage, but to the greater enigma of how matter gives rise to the mind. What happens when your brain's delicate balance is disrupted? Neurological disorders reveal how easily this finely tuned system can falter. Alzheimer's disease shows the devastating impact of cellular breakdown, amyloid plaques and tau tangles accumulating like debris in a machine, slowly erasing memories and cognitive function. The disease doesn't just affect recollection. It dismantles personality, turning loved ones into unrecognizable strangers. Similarly, Parkinson's targets movement by destroying dopamine-producing neurons, causing tremors that make simple actions like holding a cup or walking across a room become exhausting challenges. These aren't isolated malfunctions, but system-wide collapses emerging from the brain's intricate complexity. The paradox lies in why such specific failures cause such widespread effects. In Alzheimer's, damage begins in the hippocampus, the memory center, but eventually consumes the entire brain like a spreading wildfire. Parkinson's starts with motion control but often leads to dementia as the degeneration progresses. Research reveals how interconnected our neural systems truly are. When one component fails, the disruption cascades through networks never meant to operate independently. Current treatments only manage symptoms. Medications like L-Dopa temporarily replenish dopamine in Parkinson's patients, while Alzheimer's drugs may slow but never stop the neural erosion. New technologies offer glimpses of hope where traditional medicine falls short. Deep brain stimulation implants electrodes to regulate abnormal signals in Parkinson's patients, acting like a pacemaker for misfiring neural circuits. Experimental Alzheimer's vaccines target amyloid plaques before they accumulate, potentially preventing damage rather than repairing it. The most radical interventions involve brain-computer interfaces that could one day bypass damaged areas entirely, rerouting signals directly from thought to action. These advancements raise difficult questions. At what point does restoring function become enhancing capability? Should we use these tools to treat illness, boost memory, or even alter personalities? The ethical boundaries grow blurrier with each breakthrough. Electrical stimulation can improve learning speed in healthy individuals. Memory implants might one day store experiences digitally. Such possibilities force us to confront what constitutes authentic human experience. If we modify the brain, do we risk altering the essence of self? These aren't hypothetical concerns. Current clinical trials already test cognitive enhancers that could reshape education and workplace performance. Yet, for all our progress, fundamental mysteries remain. Even as we map neurons and trace neurotransmitters, no one can explain how biochemical interactions produce consciousness. Treatments manage symptoms without addressing root causes, much like patching leaks without fixing the cracked pipe. This limitation underscores how much we still don't understand about the organ that generates all understanding. There's an irony in how the brain studies itself, using flawed tools to examine their own flaws. Every discovery reveals new layers of complexity, each answer breeding more questions. But this uncertain frontier holds tremendous potential, where advances in restoration could lead to revelations about enhancement. What seemed impossible yesterday, reading thoughts, transferring memories, enters the realm of plausible research today. The journey to heal broken minds may ultimately teach us how to elevate healthy ones. Conclusion. The human brain remains the final frontier of science, a universe we've only begun to explore. Philosopher David Chalmers calls consciousness the hard problem. For good reason. We still don't know how electrical pulses create subjective experience. Yet each discovery brings us closer to revolutionizing learning, treating disorders, and expanding human potential. Imagine controlling devices with thought alone or sharing memories digitally. These possibilities aren't science fiction, they're the next chapters in neuroscience. What we learn tomorrow could redefine what it means to be human. The journey continues every time a neuron fires, a connection forms, or a researcher asks the next question.